This is an exciting time to be a Sikh. Recently there's been an upsurge in Sikh music, Sikh culture, Sikh art, and as someone who's been trying to foster this here in the UK, it is incredibly exciting. This movement has been led by North Americans, from New Jersey to New York to Toronto to California. Sikhs have been using their art to engage with politics, with society and Sikh way of life. For this documentary, I travelled across North America to find out what drives these artists, how they engage with the Sikh way of life, and whether or not this is a Sikh renaissance. The principles of Sikhi have always been passed down the generations using art. Beyond the lyrical content of the Guru Granth Sahib itself, the courts of the Gurus were packed out with poets, musicians, artists who were using art to critically engage with Sikhi as well as transmit the message itself. I wanted to find out whether this new wave of artists were also inspired by Sikhi and whether or not it was coming through in their art.
One of the few things we can't debate are the consistent, regular hiccups in history. You know, someone was always messing with us, doing something to us, right? There wasn't a lot of leisure time for arts to develop or arts to continue.
Well, I mean, particularly for me, Guru Nanak went around challenging people's perceptions, the popular perceptions about spirituality and about religion and about God. And, I kind of pictured him as a battle rapper. He would travel around to different cities and say, really, this is how you're doing things? And then he would, totally shatter their perception of, totally shatter their reality of how they're doing things. And I thought that was very, that rebellious attitude, that rebellious spirit, it teaches you to always have a critical mind and to be questioning the way things are right now and the way things are presented to you.
Well, I think to say that culture and religion are totally separate from each other is just ridiculous, because they are so intertwined in so many different ways, even like the like the style of bug that you tie or something, like that's culture and religion mixed together. There's not one set way to do it in Sikhi, but depending on if you're in Africa and you tie a smaller buggy, or like from India and you tie a bigger one, I'm not an expert in that field, but that's just an example of how culture and religion kind of cross over. And so you can't really separate the two.
So what I try to get out of Jagdish Sahib when I'm reading it, I would hope that it permeates through my pictures. I think that the one thing, the idea that everything, comes from God, that sort of relates to me in terms of how I see inspiration. My best paintings by far, at least the ones, and interesting enough that people Sangat have sort of like grabbed onto, are the ones that just came in a flash. They just popped into my head, and it really does feel like they just came from outside of me. They came from somewhere else. Because I have other paintings that are, okay, I've got to do a painting of so-and-so, and then I sit down and I do sketches, and it's a very mechanical process. And by the end of it, I might have a painting that is very, technically sound. It's a good painting. I like it because, wow, I've never drawn fabric or swords or horses so well, and it's a good painting. But it lacks something. And the paintings that sort of where I'm not sitting there coming up with them, devising, the whole thing pops completely into my head, that ends up being usually a stronger piece. And that really feels like it comes from somewhere else.
First, I remember in high school, I remember every time anyone used to ask me something, I always used to say, this is what I believe, but this is what Sikhi says. But over time, I saw my individual responses and, let's say, what I had gathered knowledge from the Guru Granth Sahib or the history, or someone doing vyakhya on something. They were coming closer and closer together. And I believe anytime I talk, right, and I think I heard someone else say it too, is that anytime I talk, I want it to be natural, I want it to be authentic, and I want it to be organic.
It's very structured, the way the rhymes are written is what I'm trying to say. I mean, you never hear a line of Barney and say, oh, that line felt like it was too long. Everything feels like it's right on time, it's right on beat. And that's something that I kind of picked up on when I was a kid. And when you go to the Gurdwara, you listen to it. You listen to Kirtan. You're basically listening to Bani put to music. I think they're very closely related.
And they say in Guru Gobind Singh's Darbar, there were, he had kavis, he had artists, he had martial artists. He respected all forms of arts. And the arts in the Sikh life are important because you're celebrating the beauty of life, without without taking away from your connection with Nam. Like, that should be the forefront. But I think even while celebrating these, beautiful aspects of life, that can even connect you even higher, maybe. I'm not sure, but I think.
It's a very beautiful thing when you think of us as Sikhs and who we are and the culture that we've been given, the Sikh culture we've been given, is that every Sikh is meant to be an artist. Like, we are not just, like, often you see a Sikh, we're told we're warriors, right? We're Sipahi, right? But we're Sant Sipahi. And what is, like, the concept is a warrior poet or warrior saint. Like, we are supposed to be individuals that on one hand we carry a Qurban and on another hand we carry a Rabab. That's who we are intrinsically. And when we turn to ourselves spiritually as individuals, we connect through art. We connect through rags. We connect through poetry. We connect through prose. We connect through all these different forms. We are a community of artists who are using that to create change, to inspire to create change. And that's why the Gurus put such a strong emphasis on the arts. And so when I think of what does it mean to be Sikh and artist, those are synonyms to me.
It doesn't matter what you do in your life, what occupation you choose. It's how you decide that you want to live your Sikh lifestyle and how you're going to integrate it into your occupation. You could be an amazing doctor and do very little for the Sikh community. And there are many people that are like that. I think that in this case, if you are an aspiring artist, if you're grounded in your Sikhi, you can actually use your talent, your passion, whether it's sculpting, whether it's singing, to bring the Panth's voice to a stage that we don't have access to right now. So if we have an amazing actor in the community, whether they wear a dastar or where they have a long gut, it doesn't matter, that people will be like, oh, that's interesting. I want to know more about this person. I want to know why they keep their hair long. I want to know more about the dastar. And that's going to serve a purpose that we have not yet seen fulfilled.
I get slapped with the role model label quite a bit, which isn't something I really embrace. For me, I enjoy the normalization of it. I enjoy the fact that the larger my my scale and my popularity gets, the more normalized it becomes. Even as a teacher, having a classroom full of kids that have a teacher with a beard and turban, that just becomes normal for them. It doesn't require any additional education to tell them, hey, this is who I am, this is what you need to understand. They just grow up, see it, and they understand that. Same thing having a teacher covered in tattoos. It kind of normalizes it and it kills the preconceptions that we kind of have sometimes as adults.
My spirituality definitely has played a part in the music I've created, probably more so in the last 5 or 6 years. My spiritual journey sort of started when I was 22, 23, yeah. And so I started to take some of the things I learned and write them in like songs and things like that. And yeah, it's been really interesting doing that because it's very conscious in a way. And I started to explore that side of it. So, learning pop songs and R&B songs and those kinds of things when I was younger, I sort of have taken a little bit of a different route with some of my tracks, doing more conscious pieces as well.
I mean, there's a lot of sort of commercial music out there that is watered down and overproduced and isn't necessarily coming from this deep part of somebody's soul. But I think music at its best, the music that I like to listen to the most, and the music that moves me and maybe moves others the most, maybe doesn't sell the most records, but moves people emotionally the most, is music that's deeply honest. Because there's something about expressing yourself in that way that I think is really raw and really truthful. And of course, that has a lot to do with what it means to be a Sikh, living in that way. And, that's my hope, that through playing my instruments and doing what I do on the stage, that I'm sort of reflecting those Sikh values of living truthfully and honestly, just in the breaths that I'm taking through my instrument.
There's this quote, somebody like said it on Twitter or something. It said, if you always tell the truth, you never have to remember anything, right? And so I think it going along with that, if you're honest in your expression, there's nothing to be nervous about. If I'm going up, I'm like, I got these guns, I'm gonna shoot these people, and I got 20 right behind me, like, yo, everybody ready, like, you feel me? Then it's dishonest. Not only is it dishonest, but it's also gandh, right? Like, it's not doing anything for anyone, right? If it's honest music, there's nothing to be nervous about. And once you realize you're being honest with yourself as an artist, that nervousness goes away.
So I definitely got a lot of bigotry and discriminatory remarks as well. And, you know, I always think of everything in life as a blessing, so I definitely wouldn't pay too much attention to those remarks. But, you know, I would try my best to definitely respond to people by educating them more about ourselves. I feel like sometimes what happens is that people aren't very knowledgeable about who we are as people. They don't know much about our background, much about our religion. And, you know, one interesting thing is that I used to have some of my YouTube followers that would actually stand up for me in my YouTube comments. So rather than me even having to say anything, people would respond and try to educate people. But, you know, I used to receive comments, everything from, oh my God, Osama bin Laden singing American songs, even though Osama bin Laden has been dead for a while. So it's always interesting. You know, I like to laugh it off more than anything else. It's been pretty funny for me. But, you know, I feel like I can definitely change people and change people's opinions through my music.
It's not all that different from just like the nervousness I experience walking down the street and people are staring at me, you know? And in a way, it's even less nerve-wracking than that because I'm sort of claiming that space for myself on a stage. And I'm saying, here I am, like, I'm expressing myself. Like, I feel much less inhibitions and sort of nervousness and anxiety when I'm on stage than walking down the street or riding the subway, actually.
Really, it's trial and error. I've gone to shows where things have not worked. You know, I've gone to a show where it's all Punjabi crowd. I played a song, I played a beat in the back, and I started rapping, and everybody's like, just staring at me. You know, they have no idea what's going on. It's us aunties and uncles and grown people. They've never heard hip hop before. They're just there to support the show, and they look at me and they go, "Ek hi kar rahe hai," you know? And it's trial and error, so you learn that, okay, this doesn't work with them, so I'm just gonna go a cappella, and I'm just gonna let my words sink in with them, because when they can hear my words, they understand what I'm saying, they appreciate that, maybe he has another art form that he's pursuing, but his message is in line with our message. So you really have to cater to each audience.
What would be amazing for me would be if I could sing Kirtan again. That would be amazing. That I would love that feeling. Sometimes I'm at the gym and I'm listening to Qawwali in my headsets, and I would love to sing a Qawwali tune for multiple people in that form. Like, to me, I love that, right? So I love the format. So those were my roots in it, and it's musically, like, it's beautiful. Like, those rags, those modes are meant to make you emote in some way, and so I would love to have that ability again. And it takes practice. It takes work. Now I'm caught up in this paradigm, like artist in his apartment downtown Toronto, right, doing his thing. So it's very different.
He called me Osama or something, right? Something typical, right? I said something like, I said something like, yo, man, I spits this cash and you spit this trash. Go back to the hood, tell them Osama kicked your ass, right? And everybody was like, whoa, right? And then it was like, oh, okay, cool. Like, for me, that's just a basic line, right? But it was cool. It was like, oh, like, you own up to it, right? It's how you deal with fear. Fear only exists as long as you run away from it. As soon as you walk towards it and confront it, it's not there anymore.
9th grade, I remember walking through, and I was the only Sikh at that point, alongside my cousin, but I was the only Sikh, and it was the first time I wore a pug. So there were two things: I look different, and I'm wearing something on my head that I usually don't wear. I still remember wearing a pug the night before and sleeping with it on because I was so excited. And then I walked through, and as soon as I walked, people literally went on the side, and I just walked through. And for a few months, it really bothered me. And then towards the end of that year or beginning of the next year, I don't know what happened. I don't know if there are any events that took place, but I looked at that as like a red carpet. The attention was on me. And what I do with that attention is, it's up to me.
The striking thing with a lot of this art is that it's socially engaged and sometimes even politically charged. The big pivotal moment in recent Sikh political history came in 1984, where the Indian government's long-standing discrimination turned into a violent persecution of the people. the burning and looting of the Sikh reference library by the Indian government indicates that this was not just an attack on the people, but on the very culture itself. I wondered how this had affected the artists that I found, and also whether any other key political events had shaped their consciousness.
1984 it's a tough sort of thing for me, for everybody really, but it's for me personally, it's like it was the reason that my parents, we lived in Amritsar. We lived in like a 2-story building. We were in the top story, and literally I remember when the attack happened, I didn't really know what was going on. I remember I think I was like 6 at the time. So to me, honestly, I was standing on my rooftop with my mother, and I remember thinking it looked like fireworks, you know? So for me, I mean, it definitely registers in a big way. I have a hard time, like, it's funny, I think we're a community split between 2 kinds of people. There's those that care too much, and it's painful, and reading about it is hard, but you still keep dipping back into subject matter because you know it's important. You even have a sense of guilt because you didn't suffer directly from it. And then there's another portion of the community that just wants to move on, doesn't want to, you know, it's like it's all behind, forget about it now. And I mean, I'm not critical of them, but maybe that's a healthy thing to do. I don't know. For me, it definitely registers in my work, and I think it's something that it fuels my need to bring, you know, the Sikh story into the forefront with my art as much as possible.
In December 83, there was a wedding I attended, and I was a little kid. But watching the wedding video, you see all my uncles, and all these guys they all have their hair cut, and they're all drinking. And you're like, you know, that uncle's Amritari, that uncle's, when did this happen? And then my pop said, yeah, 84, just kept saying it.
It's crazy, man. It hurts me on the inside to even just deal with it. But that's why I feel like we did songs like Block 32 is just, there needs to be awareness, right? And people need to know about this, that this went down and this is what happened. And, you know, because having a country, the so-called largest democracy in the world, cover this up, it's unbelievable. It is unbelievable that, you know, somebody could totally, and it's the same stuff that's happening in Syria, that happened in Libya, in Egypt, it happens everywhere. And the only way we can stop it is if the people unite. And if we get it out there that we need to get over these oppressing governments. And us as hip-hop artists, what we can do is just shed light on it. Shed light. If I can spark the mind that can change that, then, you know, I've done that little bit that I could, you know? And
I was really angry, and I was really mad and upset and frustrated. And then I went there, and all of a sudden I wasn't that angry anymore. As far as like internally, mentally, I still knew what is happening and how we're getting oppressed and what's going on. But I didn't feel that anger like I felt like somebody who can't do anything, because now I'm there and I can do something as well. And so I chose to invest my time into positive energy with the youth and working with them to see how they feel. Because actually their feelings about Punjab are more important than my feelings about Punjab, because they live in Punjab. And what they want for themselves and their country, you know, is more important than what I think sitting in America.
In 86, a member of my family was accused of being involved in that Air India bombing off the coast of Ireland, which was false. They sued the police, they won. But I went through my own, we were politicized and racialized growing up. We were organizers as kids. Yeah, everyone's organizers in their 20s, but I'm tired of that shit. I've been doing that. So, like, we were followed to school by police, phones were tapped. As kids in Montreal, I'm not an immigrant. I was born in Montreal, raised in Montreal, and this was my existence in Montreal. Okay? I'm a regular guy. Higher education, I love pizza. Like, and this was my life. So, post 9/11, it's like, I know the anatomy of bullshit and racialization after this.
I have never been stereotyped. I can actually say that I've never been pulled over at customs because of the color of my skin, nor because of the name that I have. And I guess maybe that is because my name is Selena Dillon. That's my legal name. So, people right away wouldn't think that that's a Punjabi or a Sikh name or even Muslim. And yeah, and I guess I've had short hair for a long time. So people sometimes don't even know what I am. People assume that I'm something else. They'll say, are you Spanish, or this or that. But no, I've never experienced it. And that's different to me, again, because I even have friends that are, I have my female friends who, they cut their hair and they're like shoulder length hair, but because of their name, they'll get questioned or they'll be taken aside for extra checking and things like that. And I've seen it for myself, and then more than that, I've seen my friends who wear the stars and have, beards, and they are constantly, scrutinized for that kind of thing. And I've gone through airport security with these people and watch that. And so it's, they go this way and I go that way. And that's really, it's upsetting to me sometimes, because I'm looking at it like I'm like them and why are you doing that? And it's clearly because you are stereotyping them because of a name and an identity.
I was 11 when September 11th happened. I had a good group of friends. Some people would make fun of me, call me Osama. My friends would go and beat them up, or we would go and beat them up or whatever, right? Like, it wasn't a big deal. Definitely, I think some of the silent racism is definitely a lot louder than the vocal racism, though, right? Like, the stares, the gawks, you get treated differently a little bit at a restaurant. You get seated at the back of a restaurant instead of the front of the restaurant, etc., right? You get put in a less visible place. So in that sense, it affects you. You can kind of see how your treatment is a little bit different than other people. But how you react to things like that is up to you.
I can recall plenty of horribly awkward conversations after shows with people who think that they're being nice but are really being ignorant. Telling me that I look like some Islamist dictator, or, touching my dadi without asking me. And, I think 9/11 has certainly greatly influenced the way that people perceive me and perceive people that look like me and us.
I was born in Thailand. I moved to America literally a month before September 11th. So, when you move to a new country, you still have to deal with a lot of things. Like, you have an accent problem, it's just everything over here is just so much bigger, there's just some things that you have to, it takes getting used to. And on top of that, when September 11th happened, then it's like you're getting used to this whole new environment. And on top of that, people are just throwing hate slurs at you, all these different things. And it definitely makes it really difficult.
It was 2001 and I was 13 at the time. But I think right after 9/11, really what happened was it helped me or enhanced my sped up the process of me being an artist, I guess you could say. I was fresh off the boat from Kuwait, where we grew up, and oddly enough, I was this odd little child, adolescent or teenager, you could say, that had come to this country where the culture was all cool. Everybody had to be cool, And we were cool kids back home. Like, we were the coolest of cool kids there. When we came here, it was like, this guy's wearing tight jeans and weird clothes and dresses kind of off. Like, what's wrong with this guy? So we kind of already had an uphill battle to prove ourselves that, hey, we're cool. Like, we were cool back home. But then really after 9/11, serious stuff started happening. It was more than just about being cool now. Now you had to prove to people that you were human, that you weren't harmful, that you weren't a terrorist or some crap like that,
It's the 1985 Air India bombing. That's not something that I've personally talked about in my music, but it's still something that we deal with. It's still in the media talked about to this day. I think that was, for Sikhs in Canada, that was our 9/11. Like, even today, if a politician was to make a statement in June saying, we would like to take a moment to reflect on, remember on the lives lost in Blue Star, lives lost in Delhi, right away you'll see a comment or someone will respond to that politician saying, well, we should also take a moment to remember those lives lost in the Air India bombing at the hands of Sikh extremists.
The amount of attention I get at the airport is extremely flattering. We've written about it. Me and Sikh got pulled out of an airplane and frisked outside the door of the plane. We wrote Security Shuffle to talk about that. Sikh wrote it from the perspective of he wrote it from the perspective of the security guard, and he used very vulgar language. It's a reality for me. Again, I try my best not to evaluate the things I realize now. I just try my best to understand it, like the same way I understand that, you know, if I stick my hand in the cage, the lion will bite my hand off. It doesn't matter why. It's just going to happen. I understand when we're going to the States, you know, even though they know the difference between a Sikh and a Muslim, especially at the border, they're gonna put a little dog and pony show on for everybody else. It's just yes master, no master. You make a big deal, you're gonna miss your flight.
Like, it doesn't bother me anymore. Like, I'll smile and be like, do whatever search you want, because at the end of the day, they're not going to find nothing. You're wasting your goddamn time looking at me, right? But it's a thing, you know? It's the world we live in. You just got to keep smiling and moving on and not let them get to you.
I watched this movie, you know, then again, I was forced to go watch this movie. I had no idea what it was about. I just remember just going there and hanging out with my friends. I watched this movie and it was my first interaction with what happened at the, you know, with the aftermath of 1984. And to me, something struck. I don't know what it was, where it came from. It shook me a little bit. Maybe because I hadn't been exposed to something of that kind, whether it be in Sikh perspective, you know, Punjabi perspective, or even, you know, on a human perspective. To me, it was, I remember I was in 8th grade, I was in my honors chemistry class, I was sitting in the back row, and literally I just started writing. And it was a poem about, you know, I started up with College din Nheri di raat, maut da saath, bechare bachche hoye naat. Right, I started writing that, and for me, I don't know where the inspiration was. The only thing I could connect is watching the movie, learning about 1984 and the aftermath of it, and writing something.
It's painful for me to read about a lot of times. It's really difficult. It's heart-wrenching. So the only time I think I've done something good about it is if I paint about it. At least I feel I am, in a way, it kind of exercises some of that. Rather than for it to churn in my head endlessly, I do something. So, you know, I did a painting about the Kaltak. I did a painting that was about the event. And I think it was probably my most sort of sublime moment, because it was the only painting that I've ever done that, you know, I was just sitting there. I don't even think it was in my mind. I don't know what I was doing. I was just watching some asinine thing on TV. And the whole painting just dropped into my head, like complete. And it was the only time where I then had to sort of, you know, I grabbed, like, I think it was an envelope, like an old bill or something, you know, and I sort of scribbled down the idea as fast as I could. And then it was a matter of just getting it on canvas. And it's the only painting that I felt was sort of the purest painting I've done, because the inspiration to what came out was like 100% exactly as I saw it in my brain. That's never happened to me with any painting.
My mother was there the week after. My mother saw the blood stains. My mother experienced all of that. But you sit there like, why are we handling it much differently than them? And you kind of realize that was their world. That wasn't an event that happened to them. That was their reality. And their relationship with reality is a lot different than ours, because we look at it in the past tense. And we look at it with the facts. We look at it with all the documentations and all the inquiries that have been done. And they look at it as, well, this stuff happened. We kind of realize that this is no longer home for us. You know, everybody during that time knows someone who has disappeared at the hands of the Punjab police, and their priorities were, get the fuck out. Let's get out. Move to Germany, move to the UK, move to Canada. Let's get out. This is no longer our home. This place is burnt down for us.
I think that the artists that perform at Lair and at many other places, I think they're affected by 9/11. I think they're affected by 1984. I think they're affected by Oak Creek. I think they're affected by incidences of school bullying they may have gone through, seeing their parents struggle. I think they're affected by it all.
As someone here in England looking across to North America, it seems obvious that there is a movement that exists. But I wanted to know how the participants felt. Did they feel part of a movement? And if so, what kind of movement is that? Also, is this specifically a Sikh renaissance, or is it part of the broader youth culture? Did this start recently, or has this happened before? Interestingly, opinions differed.
it is the Sikh Renaissance because never before have any of us seen such a rise in talent, such a rise in people who are inspired, and such a common theme of social justice, such a common theme of positivity. Like those who speak in terms of very, I guess, pop subjects, they're in the minority. If you look at the Sikh artists, so many of them are inspired by positivity or to create a voice or a venue or an avenue to express the feelings of the community. And it's a beautiful thing we're seeing across the coast, from North America to across the pond to England. It's a beautiful thing that we're seeing right now.
We can call it more of a cultural renaissance, right? The Sikh Renaissance means that a Sikhi at one point died, which isn't true. As long as there's Guru Sahib, there's always going to be Sikh. As long as there's nature outside, there's always going to be Sikhi, right? So, a cultural renaissance, I believe.
Now more than ever, we've seen this influx of Sikh artists or Punjabi artists that are trying to explore music, explore any sort of realm in the arts, the music, fine arts, poetry, all that category. And that's something that I hadn't seen previously. And, I think it has something to do with this generation's passion for following their dreams. I think the earlier generation, our parents' generation, was definitely more focused on giving us an education, giving us the sort of satisfaction that they've come over as immigrants, and give us a sense of purpose, give us life. But I think it's the duty and responsibility of our current generation as Sikhs to sort of spread awareness of our religion and also follow the passion at the same time.
I'm seeing a lot more South Asian artists blooming now, and we kind of feed off of each other's inspiration and we inspire others. So the circle is growing, but there's still like that notion behind the arts where, people are like, oh, it's not a lot of money in it and whatever, but I am seeing it sort of grow now.
I think we are experiencing a Sikh renaissance. Just given the past 10 years from personal experience, when I started with t-shirts, there were no t-shirt vendors, there were no t-shirt artists. Sikh t-shirts weren't even a thing. And over the past 9 years, I've seen a lot of Sikh artists, a lot of Sikh t-shirts. Every camp has a t-shirt. Every Nagar Kirtan has 5, 6, 10 vendors selling t-shirts. And not just t-shirts, there's been artists that are selling paintings. There's been photographers that have been selling photos. There's folks that are fashion designers. There's folks that are actors, poets, singers. So all of this has just happened collectively in the past 10 years. And it's happened right in front of us.
At the end of the day, art belongs to no community and no specific person, and everyone should make it. So I don't think it's a renaissance. I really just think maybe the spotlight is a tad brighter, and it's nice to have other narratives, but I don't think it's a renaissance. It was always there. It'll always be there.
I do think it's the beginning of a renaissance. Yeah. It's something that is, I think, newer, definitely. And again, I didn't have people like the ones that I'm working with to look up to. They didn't have those people to look up to when we were younger. Or maybe they did, and I didn't know about them because I wasn't studying that type of music or whatnot. Or, even necessarily so heavily involved in that community. But I think that, there's something stirring, and it's really great. And again, I think it's only just going to grow from here as long as we continue to unify.
Speaking to people from the UK have made this feel a lot bigger than it ever felt here. This kind of felt like everyone figured out how to use YouTube and put their stuff out, and people were doing it from before. And then I get it. Like the first time it ever hit me when people talked about why they appreciated Baagi, why they had a stage full of things jumping up and down. That never clicked. That was more like, these are just the people I know. These are the people who showed up.
Just seeing the reaction of like all the youth and all the people in general, you see like these people want to be like, I want to learn an instrument, or I want to rap, or I want to draw. And growing up, I remember I didn't really see that much. Growing up, people were all like, I want to be a firefighter, doctor, this or that, right? And now, like, I have people, like, after my shows, like, I have little kids coming to me, be like, I started playing violin because of you.
We're on the curve right now. That's the way I feel like it. It's, it's becoming, we're making it acceptable for you to express yourself in whatever way you want to express yourself. And I feel like the old thinking was that if it's not in this bubble, then it's wrong.
In 2011, when I started OCAD, there was only me and another brown guy. Throughout like 1,000 kids that were in my school, or I guess in my year, there was only just the two of us. And now that I'm going into my third year, there is about like 10 of us. So I don't think that's a big number from 1,000 kids. But me noticing the difference from my first year to my third year, I think it is happening. And I don't know if it's exactly a renaissance, but I think it's more so just kids not being scared to say, you know what, I love to do this and I'm gonna do it.
We are the children of 1984, and we are now awakening. We're now getting to age. Why is there this renaissance did not exist prior? Because I think that we were too young to. Like, is it a coincidence that 25 to 30 years after 1984, there's all this change? Or is it because all this passion, all this energy which occurred from 84 that was sent on and passed on to the young people, they've now grown up and they have the ability now to take that passion that they grew up listening, going to rallies and seeing this injustice and finally have a positive, safe and peaceful medium to express it.
I think it's going to require a lot of power brokers and gatekeepers and people who are running our gurdwaras and, running our camps, to have a bit of a different mentality when it comes to the arts and when it comes to expression in general. Sometimes these environments can be very stifling for young people, or very stifling for people who don't fit into the norm.
I think in the next 5 to 10 years, you're really going to peak. And truly, that's going to be what inspires people to have that revolution, to really support that revolution. Because musicians are the people that are going to carry people, that are going to inspire people to revolt.
So, this renaissance was a response to the social and political issues our generation faces. But it didn't just happen. Sikh organizers made effort to create an infrastructure for this new scene. 2 events in particular were crucial. Laird in New Jersey and When Lions Roar in Toronto both gave a platform for artists to share their work and present new ideas. Interestingly, they both focused on 1984 and its legacy. When Lions Roar was established by the Sikh Activist Network, a group that engages with broader political issues such as immigration, anti-war activism, and anti-racism. These events are attended by hundreds of Sikhs and non-Sikhs, and the performance videos online help spread local Sikh youth cultures around the world. But how important are these events in shaping artists' work?
I've had the opportunity to share some of my works at these events, and that's how I've been kind of exposed, and people saw my work and were inspired, and it's just like a chain link reaction.
When I first started, that was the only outlet. When Lions Roar, Lad, all these were the only outlet. Again, with any community, you can see that. Like When Lions Roar was inspired by there's a concept in Toronto called When Brothers Speak, and it was kind of inspired by this idea. Let's create an environment. Let's create a pond for these fish to swim.
And I didn't have like massive expectations, but the amount of people that came was tremendous, and that felt really good. I had people that came up to me that cared about the art, and they were really impassioned by it, and it was about something bigger, and I like contributing my little thing to something that was a much bigger event.
I know a lot of kids that'll be like, when they go to college, they'll be like, my parents never really taught me anything. And then they learn everything when they get to college. So events like these, like, exposes these kids at an earlier age. And it also, like, gives them a lot of, it also inspires them by seeing all these artists perform.
The last 2 years, the Junior Sikh Coalition has been performing at Lair, and this is their first time ever getting in front of a stage. And they are actually talking about so many instances, like the stuff that they see on the streets in Richmond Hill. They're talking about their parents' struggle of being first-generation immigrants. They're talking about school bullying and how they have been they've even come to tears because of these things, right? Today, you can take your kids to these events and show them that, hey, look, your peers, your brothers and sisters are creating this, and it's beautiful, and you can do it too. So yes, Sikh art-related events are very important, and I think the more the merrier, and this is just the beginning that we see of the Sikh art-related events.
Well, actually, around the time when Red Lines were the very first one, I had just started releasing my things online like a year before. Of course, I've always been doing this. I've been doing music my whole life, as I said. But having the online presence was something new to me because YouTube is sort of a newer it's a newer phenomenon. So I had just started doing that a year prior to that, and I mean, I had released stuff on MySpace and whatnot and YouTube, and so it was like getting different feedback from like so many different people. But then after, I had the When Lines Were performance, I realized I had this flood of, people liking my things that were from the Punjabi community. And that was really different in a way and actually amazing as well, because again, I can connect to them on some level. And, the song I was doing for that particular event was one of, speaking more of my spirituality. So again, that was a way for me to connect spiritually to the community.
Azadi was an arts event this year. When first year When Lines Were happened, BC community attempted to do a Lone Lines where they did a really small one at a coffee shop. The component of arts and having poetry and performing nights have been incorporated into Jakarta, and after their camps they have a certain component of arts. You do see post, I think When Lions Roar, a lot of this continuation of arts across North America, and you do see it continuing. You do see it occurring in more and more places. But I think it's something that needs to continue and go further.
I think they are important because they bring awareness, but I think they should be more open to the outside community as well as our own, because I feel like we are a culture that needs to be explored not just by our own community but everybody else, because it is so open to all the other cultures. So I think I would appreciate the events much more if there's people who actually don't know anything about it, like myself, and then that creates another conversations about questions and answers, and that creates more of a discussion.
What's really exciting about the scene is that the shockwaves created can be felt all over the world, in countries as diverse as Thailand and Germany. Young Sikhs are expressing themselves in really exciting ways. As someone who's been experimenting with art for the last couple of years, I understand firsthand how difficult it can be to first begin and then to share. So when meeting the pioneers of the North American scene, I wanted to know, how did they begin? How did they develop? And what advice do they have for budding artists?
Well, I think that especially with the South Asians, that expressing your emotions in any way, shape, or form is not really encouraged. And, we're sort of kind of taught to just keep quiet and just keep working hard, and, eventually you'll get what it is that you're working towards.
We didn't just wake up with confidence. I certainly didn't. And I know that right now I'm dealing with, quite a challenging point in my project right now. And yesterday I released a post and I said, you know what, guys, I cried all night. I couldn't make music that I wanted to. Couldn't make a track that I really liked. I let them know that. I try to be as honest as possible, because they need to know that this is not just something that happens overnight.
So I feel art is very, it's a very personal thing. And when you're up there just totally bearing yourself and sharing all these personal things about yourself, you've already won in a sense.
I think if you're yourself and if you do what you think is right and understand what's happening and use the guru as the focal point, use what we have as a focal point, I don't think you could go wrong. I really don't think so. I think the only thing that we could do is move forward and learn from our mistakes. That's it. And if anything, I would value learning from the mistakes more than living an average life without making any mistakes. Because those mistakes will make us better.
But one quote is by a famous Canadian hockey player, Wayne Gretzky, and he says, "You miss 100% of the shots you never take." And I've always found that quote to be very powerful. If I hadn't taken that first step to my music, I probably wouldn't be here today in terms of American Idol and following my passion and dream.
Take a risk. Go out and try it. I guarantee you, you're probably a lot better than you think you are, and you're just a little shy. So just go out, take a risk, and I feel that the community will support you. In places like Lara, Winds, Lion Roar, they're safe spaces.
Do it. Do it. Why not do it? What are you doing right now? What are you, like, watching TV? That. What's watching TV? So you can talk about it later and waste more time. So, like, just do it now, right? I mean, for me, like, if I can go back in time, I would tell myself that, what are you doing right now? Like, do it right now.
Somebody who doesn't even have a choice about whether or not they can make art, that's what I think about, right? I have a line that says, for those who don't even find their interest, for those people who aren't even given enough time in their life to be able to explore, to find their interests. They don't even know what they're interested in. And if you're somebody who has an interest and has the ability to pursue your interest, whether it's as a career or not, that doesn't matter, but you have the option and the resources, then I think that you should take advantage of that on behalf of all the people that can't.
There's, in Harwinder Sahib, they say up until like the 70s, there were Kavi Darbars outside, right? Every time they had like a big function going on. These are just poets expressing their poetry. That's it. It wasn't Kirtan, it wasn't, Tat Diwan or anything. It was just Kavi Darbars, just poetry. Right? Like, imagine that going on at Harwinder Sahib. You can't think about that now.
I'd like to think those people with heritages similar to mine, i.e. based in like Sikhi, know that feeling of putting themselves out there. You wore a turban, for Christ's sake, to school on the first day when there was no other Sikhs in your class. Life's a lot harder than that. Okay? Put it out there.
Don't be scared of what other people are going to think. You don't even have to share it with other people initially, but really diving into your creative process is huge and is a courageous act to do that. And then to share that with the world is a very, very powerful thing.
Just don't wait till you're ready, because you never will be ready. So just put your stuff out and continually learn. So it's execute, observe, and adjust. And you're just continually molding and growing and learning.
Just don't be scared to do it, because you don't know what you're going to end up with. Like, I didn't know how to do portraiture, and I still don't. I suck at it. But I work with it. I make it my own, and I actually love the outcome that I get from it. And I think, like, once people start kind of writing it down, start drawing it out, start painting it out, you get to see, you know what, I don't like acrylic, I want to go with oils. Or, you know what, I don't even like painting, I want to draw. Or, you know what, screw drawing, I want to write.
Have a vision. Really have a vision for what you want to do first before you start. And then just do it. Don't worry about how many likes you'll get. Don't worry about how many retweets you'll get. Don't worry about how many views you'll get. Start and just do it and pretend like nobody's watching.
I opened for the RZA in LA at the House of Blues. And I remember during our sound check, there was like a group of high school kids that had come on a field trip or whatever. And he spoke to them. And I remember he told them, spend time alone. He's like, all that, social interactions, hanging out with your friends, messing around, going to school, being with your family, etc. All that is important. But what's equally as important is spend time alone. Spend it meditating, spend it reading, spend it just thinking. Spend time with yourself to get to know yourself. And from there, you'll kind of understand where your wants are coming from.
Try just going on a long drive and just not talking to anybody, but just thinking, just unwinding. There are going to be things that you'll understand about yourself that are gonna just blow your mind.
I think creativity is the least wasteful way of spending your time. I really do.
Just give it the time that it needs, give it the love that it needs, and see what comes of it. At the very least, you'll grow as a person.
It's just a blank canvas. It's up to you how you fill it and how you choose to get that part of you. How do you choose to, I guess, manifest into words that part of your soul or into that canvas?
A lot of my work stems from writing. So if you can't draw, you can write. Write as much as you can and read as much as you can. I tend to start off brainstorming. Like if I have an idea, I will put in a bubble and brainstorm ideas around that.
If you do it once, you'll get addicted to it and you'll have to do it again.
Something like art, you can't make it happen. I spent a lot of time trying to make it happen and I sort of didn't. When I stopped caring and just focused on the work, things started happening.
The journey in itself to create and to share what you create, I think, is worthwhile in itself.
You know, go home, practice how you're going to hold your mic, practice how you're going to please the crowd, practice what you're going to say in between songs, practice what you're going to do to get the crowd riled up. Learn who your crowd is going to be.
For every 100 ideas, one is good.
It's starting off, you're not going to be good. I was the worst rapper ever. I was so bad. Like, I'll tell it, and I will openly say this all the time. It took me about 5-6 years of writing before I liked anything I really did.
The Renaissance in North America has gone from strength to strength, seen with new events such as Azadi in Vancouver and Jagada's Core Voices in California. In the UK, organisers such as myself have been inspired by what's been going on, and in 2011 created our own showcase of Sikh art in the form of Saffron Mic. Here we saw filmmakers, poets, musicians, artists all come together to express themselves. This movement is reminding us of our roots in art and how important it is to confront tough issues. It's also giving us a way to celebrate the Sikh way of life. Personally, I've taken a lot of inspiration and guidance from these interviews, and I hope you can too. Because it'd be great to see more Lairs, When Lines Roars, Saffron Mics, Azadis all over the world. We are a global community, and our time is now.
Thank you.